We're gonna go ahead and take attendance to get started. So let's go in the proper order. Jessica, if you could facilitate that for me.
Yes. Leslie Brown,
Present.
Dr. Bruce. Angela Butler Owens. Rachel Corona,
Present.
Lauren Dalbert,
That's out.
Bianca Lachaud. Present. Dr. Frederick Lee,
Present.
Dr. Nichols,
Present.
Nettie Obembe,
Present.
Willie Robinson, Lauren Dalbert,
Here.
and Tanisha Hickle. Here. Okay, so. So we reached quorum, and also we still expect to see Walter McMath, Reverend Harris, and Dr. Bruce.
Do we have any TCAB members present online?
No.
No, okay. So we've met quorum. We have a few more TCAB members joining us. And again, welcome everybody, and welcome to those who have joined us this evening online to our TCAB meeting. We're gonna go ahead and we will review our meeting objectives. Jessica, Jessica, are you able to pull that up?
Yeah.
Walter.
This is for what we're doing today.
Let the record reflect that Walter McMath has joined the meeting.
We just so each objective is just a separate line.
Separate slide, okay. All right. In that case,
You want me to name the agenda?
yes, please.
So our agenda today is to review and approve the record of action from May 11th. And we also will receive a presentation from East Bay Community Foundation sharing insights from the first cohort of the Federal D. Glover Community Wellness Network. We'll also receive and review recommendations and edits from the RFP from the 3 ad hoc working groups and approve the final draft for the equity committee. And then lastly, we'll receive updates and review next steps.
Thank you, Jessica, for reading the agenda. Are there any questions, comments? You have a public before we move forward? Okay. All right, that's good. So we can move forward. Yeah. Next up, I have on here that we are going to reaffirm our community agreements as well. Are we gonna, should I not? Either we've already gone through this. I just want to clarify.
Yeah, we can do that. Thank you. Sorry, I have a couple different things that Thank you for your patience.
So let's just pull that up, give you. Okay, so just to ground us again in our TCAB community agreements, you can see what they are here. Thank you, Jessica, for pulling them up. I just want to make sure that we went through what was on this list here. I won't go into detail. We know where we stand in terms of what we have been consistently agreeing to and pulling through as a TCAB. Are there any additions or any questions or concerns regarding our community agreements? That. So, okay, then we will go ahead and we'll move forward. Jessica has reviewed the agenda already. The next item on the agenda was approval of the record of action. That's next up. On the menu.
On an item, on items that are not on the agenda, if anyone has.
So is there any public comment on the items, or any items that are not, or anything that's not on the agenda from the public? Anyone online or anyone present this evening? Welcome public comment at this time.
Sorry. If you have a public comment, please raise your hand and I'll promote you to panelist. See none.
If there are none at this time, we'll go ahead and we'll move forward. The next item on the agenda, as I mentioned, is approval of the record of action. So we have to pull it up here. Is there a motion to approve the record as it's been presented?
So moved.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. By Walter McMath, second by Dr. Frederick. Okay. If there are no changes in discussion, then all in favor, say aye. Okay. Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay, then the motion carries and the record of action is approved. So there, that was very easy. So next we'll move on. Tonight we are very honored and excited to welcome Jasmine Jones from East Bay Community Foundation. Jasmine was present with us last month, so thank you for returning and continuing to enlighten us and share your insights. We understand that you have a report to share with us from the first family wellness cohort update. So I will give you your time. We have 20 minutes for you to present and also follow up with questions and public comment.
Awesome.
Thank you, Jasmine.
If I could just do a kind of formal introduction. So Jasmine Jones is a consultant with the East Bay Community Foundation. She has been playing point. She's been the lead person that our office has been working with this past year plus, as the East Bay Community Foundation has been tasked with administering the grants for our cohort of African-American-led organizations providing services to Black communities. So this is our pilot year of services that we put out $1 million in initial seed funding, really to kind of test how we can start to build a foundation of Black-led organizations working in concert with one another. Jasmine has been instrumental in that work, providing so much of not just administrative support and leadership on behalf of the East Bay Community Foundation, but building relationships with the organizations and really setting the groundwork and foundation for what it means to be culturally responsive, to be culturally resonant, just be an expert and being like a good human being. So guys, we really appreciate you coming out here today to provide yourself, provide us and the TCAB with a high-level summary of the summary report. Just to also say that next week, she will be presenting the actual report and submitting it on behalf of East Bay Community Foundation to our equity committee. So tonight, that report has to go first to our equity committee in terms of a formal submission. Tonight, she's just presenting the high-level highlights from it.
Thank you, Peter. That was a nice introduction. I'm like, oh my goodness, how do I follow that? But good evening, everyone. So excited to be in the space in the room with you all this evening. As Peter shared, I'm here to talk a little bit more about what we learned in year one of the kind of pilot cohort of $1 million that went out to 13 service providers that funded 14 different programs. And so also want to just manage folks' expectations. Oftentimes we hear $1 million and say, oh, that's a lot of money. There must have been just like, we must have changed the world with that. But want to remind us that that is a very small amount of resources. And it's the kind of seed funding to help us understand what this network could do, what's the power and the potential in this network when it's funded to its full capacity and have all the infrastructure to really run well within the county. So I'm excited to share what we've learned in the first year and how this can kind of shape future years to come. So we can go advance the slide. Awesome. So what I wanted to just share with this kind of key takeaways. These are some of the high level things that shown out from that first year. And one of the things we noticed is that nonprofits are really deep in the community doing the work with folks. And they're closing critical gaps within the community, right? And so partnering with community-based organizations is really foundational and important when you are trying to meet certain needs, right? So they were able to meet basic needs for like food, clothing, and essential resources that our public services have not necessarily consistently been able to do. And so that in itself was a really big takeaway. Trauma-informed care is essential and it's not optional. And so really recognizing the communities in which we are trying to serve and the communities that are often overlooked, being able to have services that are trauma-informed and responsive is really important so that you are making sure that you connect with folks, right? And meeting them where they're at. And so all of the groups, or most of the groups, shared how they employed that kind of practice within their organizations in order to meet communities where they're at. Something I was really excited to see throughout is how much or how highly utilized mental health services were within the cohort. Something that continued to come through and through is that trauma is something that our communities are dealing with significantly. And many of us don't feel comfortable or don't access certain resources that are provided around mental health. For whatever reasons that may be, it might be because you don't see yourself reflected in those systems, or there's stigmas within our communities around mental health, or even accessing the supports to take care of mental health. And so the fact that this was an area within the program that was highly utilized, I was really excited to see that. And I think that is something emerging that we may want to consider to continue to track and or invest in as you are continuing to build out what this network looks like. Connection and belonging are foundational to healing, right? And so this is about holistic wellness. And if we don't recognize the importance of connection and recognizing that healing happens in community, and the important in making sure that that happens, we will, and that's mine, I gotta figure out how to turn this off. Jeez, keep up. But yeah, that those things are foundational to healing, and that there was significant responses from groups talking about the reduction in social isolation. And I think those things are very important, right? Again, as I mentioned, healing does not happen in a vacuum. It is actually really, really important to be connected to community and have the pathways or the navigators within community to know where to go when you need certain things and resources in the community. Community-led models produce community scale results. This is really about going back to what came there. So when this initiative all began. It was because you all saw the need to have very targeted interventions and supports for a community, Black community, that has not been met, right? That is historically has had been underserved and had high health disparities. And so with that, we saw that when you have service providers that reflect you, you have culturally responsive care, you're able really to meet community and scale the impact you want to see, right? And so I heard from county that systems have had challenges with reaching Black population. And through creating partnerships like this, the county has been really able to just have really targeted resources to meet a certain need. And so this type of model is really important and should be continue to be scaled and built, invested in. And that leads me to the next one is investment in infrastructure is inseparable from impact, right? And so we can really, really invest in all the impact. You can say, go serve all the people in the community. But if you don't actually have the infrastructure to do that work, we're setting our organizations up for failure. And so it's very important that we not only invest in the impact that we want to see happen in the community, but what does it really mean to invest in the grassroots organizations who actually have the cultural competency and the social capital to reach the communities in which you want to connect with more deeply, right? That means how are we supporting data infrastructure collecting? That means how are we understanding what it means to support their fundraising abilities, right? Because a $50,000 grant ain't gonna get you that far. Now, it can seed your investment and your ability to access other resources from other folks, but asking folks to serve 1,000 people with $50,000 is asking really a lot of the community, right? And so how do you actually support, like I said, the fundraising parts of it, the communication parts of them telling the story of their impact, and how do you really support the building of the data systems to share and narrate that impact? I will say that's not necessarily explicitly here, but connected to this kind of infrastructure piece, more on the back end of having an intermediary organization is really, really important to have a centralized place to collect information, support the administration, really support the convening and relationship building, right? That's something that came out that was really important, that collaboration doesn't just always happen naturally, that sometimes you have to bring folks together and see that collaboration and really hold the container for folks to build trust and be vulnerable and kind of share resource across, right? And so I think it's really important that we recognize the value in having an intermediary organization, particularly though for the making meaning of all of the work that's happening and really understanding how to centralize and collect data. I'll say one more thing that's not here, but connected to this idea of what does it mean to have an intermediary organization. Some of you went to Sacramento with us when we met with Sierra Health Foundation. One of the biggest takeaways for me in that space was Sierra Health Foundation really held all of the back end administrative stuff. So the grassroots organizations and the folks who are mostly embedded in community can do the work, can be with community, can meet the need, can be on the call, can go to the meet, like whatever it is that they needed to do to make sure that they met the needs of the community, they can do that. And the foundation or the intermediary really served as how do we collect the data? How do we make sure there's shared data metrics across the board so that we're understanding and tracking the same things and can tell a cohesive story? Because this money is coming from, elected officials and the budget, right? So they want to know how their money is being spent, right? And so they really took that burden off of the grantees so that the grantees can do the work, right? And they built the capacity of the grantees to understand the importance in it, the value in it, and how to do it consistently across the board so that everybody's telling the same story. They said firsthand, it wasn't easy, right? It took some time. People made mistakes, they learn together, they build together. And so I just want to again, just underscore the importance of why having an intermediary organization is important. I was not in the community doing all the work, but I was there to have conversations with folks. I was there to answer the phone for folks. I was there to hold the container for trust building. I wasn't Peter or Kendra, so folks felt comfortable to share things with me that they wouldn't tell Peter or Kendra or Jessica, right? And so the value in having this partnership in this way, I think it speaks to this first year and all the impact that happened. So I was probably like 20 minutes right there, but we can try to get through the rest of the slides. And I probably was said a lot of the stuff that was already in the rest of the slides, but again, going back to like why this network was important, it was really all the years of advocacy throughout Contra Costa, right? Of folks saying that there's not enough culturally responsive care. You know, mothers and infants don't have the support, women don't have the support that they need, and that there needed to be more safe spaces for young folks, and that you all wanted this county to really honor community-centered healing, right? Understanding the richness that already existed here. How do we lean into what's here versus bringing in other partners or trying to recreate something or saying, oh, the county can just do it. What does partnership look like, right? And how do you really lean into the wisdom and richness that's here? So as I named, there were 13 organizations, there are 14 programs across 5 different pillars. This was $1 million investment, and there are 5 different zip codes that you all really wanted to see reflected and invested in. So that is kind of like what this network and all this work was about. You can go to the next one. This is the impact. I do, again, want to manage expectations. 21,000, almost 22,000 folks served is a big number with $1 million. I want to let you all know that the funding alone from the county did not just, that funding alone from the county didn't get to that numbers. Grantees were able to leverage the funding that they got from the county to bring in other grants. It was able to kind of enhance programming that already existed, right? So they were able to scale some of the programs that they already had. So I want this to demonstrate the value in investing in organizations who are already rooted in community, what they can do with the additional dollars that you all provide. So 21,495 folks. Of those folks, 15,740 of them were Black. The cities that were represented are here. One of the grantees mentioned countywide, and so that was there, and so that's a little that's up there. But of the ratings, right, 4.3 out of 5 are what grantees said their clients rated the services that were received through the first year. So this is the impact of that first year, and we can go to the next one. This is just breaking down the pillars again. And so within the maternal and infant health, it was Breast Friends Lactation and Black Girls Mental Health. Within behavioral health, it was Healing Spot Counseling, NAMI Contra Costa, Equity for Black Women and Girls, and Center Care Wellness. The food and housing was Genesis Church, Grace Arms of Antioch, and the Black Neighborhood. And I want to just let y'all know, back to this basic needs stuff, I don't know if y'all remember what was happening last year, but folks was threatening to get their SNAP benefits cut. I think maybe they did get cut. There was just a lot of stuff that was happening around just meeting basic needs. And so food distribution was big, okay? Folks was coming from all over, but folks were really like, we got to prioritize our communities. And so I just want to name that a lot of these numbers did come from people just trying to meet their basic needs of getting food and clothing, right? And then the next highest was mental health. Okay, so I just want to name that as very important. And again, the gaps in which these nonprofits are filling, because I'm not sure what, I'm just, I'm not sure if the county has food distribution centers, but lots of folks access food distribution in addition to mental health services. Youth development, 100 Years Enterprise, Genesis Church, and also Improve Your Tomorrow. And then within community healing, it was Healthy Hearts Institute and Miles Halls Foundation. Go to the next one. So this just kind of high level again shows what folks reported. These were all self-reported from the grantees in terms of what they were tracking to report back to us. Back to why I'm underscoring the importance of a centralized place of data collection, but not only that, some kind of uniform way in which this initiative moving forward says we want to track these 5 things over the next 10 years. And we want grantees to use this template, and we're going to train our grantees up on how to use it. And if it's a new grantee, because you decide every year y'all gonna have a new cohort, then a part of that should be coming in and onboarding. Y'all learn how to use this data tracker. And you know, over the next year, this is how you're going to track this data. But I just want to name that that's really important if we want to have consistent data across the board for grantees to be sharing back with us. But of the self-reported data, Breast Friends named that there was increased breastfeeding success among Black families, which is really, really important. I can't tell their story, but they have an amazing story in terms of the impact of breastfeeding, Black mothers, Black birthing people breastfeeding, and the impact that it has on the children in the future. So it's very powerful. And so I think being able to have that is something that we should celebrate. Black Girls Mental Health Foundation talked about improved well-being through therapy, improved access to service, increased confidence and leadership. Healing spot counseling, reduce social isolation, mental health improvement, increased access to crisis resources beyond 911. So again, understanding that what resources that are out there so that folks aren't using 911 as the first call to action, but that there may be other ways in which to deal with crises and this comes up. NAMI reported reduced depression and social isolation, increased mental health and diagnosis knowledge, equity for Black women and girls, and talked about improved well-being and via sister circles. And so a lot of this, again, even though the maternal and behavioral or the maternal side was dealing with mothers and children, it still had a lot to do with behavioral health. And so want to name again how important it was, or that showed up as a really big theme throughout accessing mental health services. You can go to the next one. Food and housing insecurity. So Genesis Church named that 80% of the Elevate workshop completion rate. Elevate workshop is their financial literacy workshop. And so folks completed that at an 80% rate. And 70% of the participants applied, right? They applied these principles to their employment or housing opportunities that they were securing. Grace Arms said that there were $75+ a month in food, groceries, and savings. And so they named again that a lot of folks were coming to them for food and other basic needs. And so folks were able to save money as a result of being able to access services from Grace Arms. Black neighborhood was increased healthy food access. 100 Years Enterprise was reduced recidivism. Folks were attaining their goals. And so the young people that were, trying to finish high school or whatnot, or get a job or seek therapy, they were able to attain those goals. Conflict resolution without escalation. Genesis Church also had youth healing circles and named that there was significant reduction in behavioral issues, increased student confidence and self-efficacy, and Improve Your Tomorrow named that 87% of their students felt a sense of belonging, and then increased family engagement was something that happened. Yeah, that's the next slide. Within here for Healthy Hearts, there were coordinated healing circles across the areas in the community. There were named priority areas. There were several urban farming hours for community residents, and there were regular food distribution to help the health disparities. Miles Hall Foundation set a little bit differently within the cohort because they were not a service-based organization. They're more of an advocacy organization. And the way in which they were positioned here was really to be able to share and uplift the story of the cohort. And so this here kind of shares their kind of digital footprint of the things that they did through the year. And so I'm not gonna go through all of them, but the first couple are build digital infrastructure to connect community resources. They were able to develop and publish 12 profiles for the cohorts. And yeah, those are just a few of those things. We can advance to the next one. I'm gonna try and run through these because I know I'm probably past 20 minutes. One again thing that I wanted to name is the importance of capacity building. And so there was an additional $60,000 that was above and beyond the $1 million that was allocated to this initiative to do just that. And so there were funding that was identified in both from the Office of Racial Equity and Social Justice and East Bay Community Foundation to do a three-part workshop focused on different technical assistance around data tracking, fundraising, and also telling your story, storytelling. In addition to that, we were able to partner with Candid to provide resources to grantees around how Candid partners with nonprofits. I'm not sure if you all are familiar with Candid, but it's a nonprofit kind of directory that connects funders to nonprofits. And so the grantees were able to all access the Candid database, learn more about the different services they provide. And in addition to that, they did a measuring your impact virtual training because again, data was such an important thing that we wanted to discuss and talk about and drill into all of our grantees, both because it helps you tell our story, you can fundraise, and you are again just able to communicate your impact. Strategic communications, we were able to partner with Mancala to develop the report that you all will have. There's a PDF that's really just kind of bare bones to it acts as an executive summary. And we got it a little bit later today, so I'm sure they'll be able to send you all the executive summary. Kendra and Peter will be able to do that. But there's a microsite that will be accompanying the executive summary, and that's a more dynamic, kind of living report, if you will, that folks will be able to interact with beyond just the reading. There'll be videos and stories and stuff like that will live in the microsite. And that microsite is something that you all can share with other people in the community, funders and things like that. So it's really a resource to say like, hey, look what we did in Contra Costa, you should invest in us. You can go to the next one. So lessons from year one is really about public and private partnerships work. So this partnership between East Bay Community Foundation and Office of Racial Equity and Social Justice and Contra Costa County really I feel like serves as a model of what can be possible, because having this kind of a relationship and this partnership allows the county to invest in community organizations that often wouldn't be able to get these resources. Right. But having a partner like EBCF who can be nimble and flexible and really be able to meet community and grassroots organizations at where they're at, allowed to facilitate the impact that we saw lifted up earlier in the report. Black-led organizations need pathways, not just funding. So again, back to this idea of one-time funding is not going to have sustained change in organizations. What does it really mean to build infrastructure? I do think the federal government network is seeding that infrastructure. And so like, what does it mean to have ongoing investment from the county side? And how do we leverage that ongoing investment from the county side to bring in other partners, right? It's been a dream of mine for a long time. I don't know if y'all know, I've said this several times. I'm from Richmond. And when I was there, part of my work there was to how do we mobilize more resources to Richmond. This is such a beautiful example of, again, a public and private partnership that can really anchor other investors in this community because they see us all saying, oh, government, community, private folks are working together to make change. How do we invest more in there, right? And so again, how do we create the pathways for Black-led organizations who, again, have the proximity, the cultural knowledge, the capital to reach the communities we want to serve? We actually have to create the pathways for us to get there. 1 million plants the seed, but the seed has to be watered, right? We have to continue to water this work. And so the pilot did what it was designed to do. It helped us learn what the community needs are, what our organization's needs are, who are actually serving and responding to the communities that we want to serve. And so how do we go from there is, again, an ongoing investment, brokering relationships with folks outside of our community to invest here. There's lots of money. We in California, right? We are the fourth largest economy in the world. And so, like, abundance. We got to think of abundance mindset. We were just talked about that earlier. Got to get out of scarcity and into abundance mindset. And so we have to ensure this is watered. Improved data collection for year 2 and beyond. And so I'm not going to stress this enough. I'm not going to stress it enough. We have to really get clear about some metrics that you want to track over time. Because we don't want to give any reason for people to say we're failing. And so if we can have something that we are tracking over consistent time and be able to say, this is what it looks like. And even if, there's some, because we learned from Sacramento, there was a moment where, impact had decreased some, right? But there were lessons learned through that. And then they were able to pivot and make changes. And so having improved data collection, I think is just going to strengthen this work and allow you all to communicate the impact and the value of this initiative in this community. I think that might be my last one. Yeah, work ahead is, this was a total of $8 million, like 8.9 maybe. I might have that number wrong. But this is really about continuing to create pathways for referrals between organizations. That was something that we hoped was going to happen in this first year. But again, what is infrastructure, back-end infrastructure look like? That's having coordinated pathways on the back end. Relationship building across the region is important. Dedicated coordination capacity. We know that they're the physical home for the network that's gonna be happening. Really thinking about what is procurement looking like going forward. And when we say procurement, it's like, how do you continue to partner with an organization that is able to be a little bit more nimble to then connect with grassroots organizations that the county might not otherwise be able to invest in. And multi-sector partnerships is what's going to help improve the health systems. And so I'll stop. I probably did 30 minutes, maybe 40. I saw y'all writing. I was like, she better hurry up. Oh, okay. We want you all to champion. Okay, wait, go back. For the TCAB, what you all really like focus on moving forward? And I remember someone asked me this question about multi-year funding. I do think it's important. I was just having a conversation with some other folks that I work with, and we're like, I don't want to ask y'all for money every year. What are we gonna do? So I think it's important. I don't know how much flexibility the county has with that. Continue to advocate for a reform that centers Black-led works, right? And so if there's procurement reforms that can happen within the county that can ensure grassroots organizations can actually access dollars in the county, I would say you all should continue to advocate that way. In the event that there's not major changes the county can do, I think advocating to have a partner like EBCF or another partner to help administer the funding is going to be important. Supporting data infrastructure. I said this about 14 times, and so this is my 15th. And it's really important to be able to have that data infrastructure so that again we can tell the story of collective impact, not just what my one organization did. And amplify this network as a model of equitable investment. I really think people across the country should be able to hear what we all are doing here. And I do think there should be ongoing investment so we can continue to grow this work. So I'm done now, for real.
Thank you. So much. I mean, there's so much more to learn and from you, so we appreciate you sharing all of these pearls of wisdom. I'd like to call for consent from the TCAB to take 10 minutes because I know that there's so much that we have taken away from what you just shared, and there may be a lot of great questions. So I want to call for consent for 10 minutes, if everyone is okay with that. Okay, thumbs up. Thank you, Walter. Any thumbs down? Yeah, we got majority thumbs up. Great. Because I have a question. I'm sure many of us want to drill down from what you've shared. I'll start by just asking, you overemphasized, and thank you for doing that, the importance of tracking data and knowing what you're tracking from the beginning. So over the course of the time that you guys were doing this, what was the biggest lesson that you learned as you had to shift from, tracking one set of data to the next set in the following year? What did you learn? Or what did you change?
Yeah, so this was just year one. And I feel like the biggest lesson that I learned is that if we don't have, what do you want to call it, like a universal template that every grantee is using, then we're gonna get multiple sets of data. And then as the person analyzing it, I'm like, okay, well, how am I converting pounds to tons, or like, what bags versus people? How are we helping bake in the infrastructure for people to be able to identify repeat clients versus new clients, right? All of those type of things, I believe is really helpful in having in the lessons that I took away. Yeah, so that's why I kept emphasizing maybe it's 5 metrics that, as this initiative says, like, we want to track this over the next set of time so that you then create a universal template that no matter if you're in year 1 or year 5, it's the same template. Maybe there's some improvements, right? You learn lessons. It's the same template so that you can track the same information across each organization and we can tell a consistent story, right? Because we want to tell a an aggregate story of impact, and then also let individual organizations shine in the areas in which they do their work. But it's hard to tell an aggregate story of impact if we don't understand what's the aggregate story we want to tell, like what are the things we want to know so that we can be able to lift those up, right? So being able to go in on the front end knowing that, so that you're not on the back end and saying like, okay, so what meaning am I trying to make now that I have all of this information in front of me?
Can I just ask a follow-up to that?
Yeah.
You may have answered it. So was there any particular metric that you decided to throw out or that you decided to change significantly? And if so, what was that?
Yeah.
And why?
No, there was no metric that was thrown out.
Or changed?
Nothing that was changed significantly. I think we identified what are the things that are most consistent across the board, so we can lift those up as the aggregate story. And then we drill down on just allowing the more individualized data or things that didn't have, consistently across the board. We'll just highlight that for each organization. So the things that we can highlight across the board is individual served, what areas they were served in. What were some of the other things that was satisfaction,
Number of sessions.
number of sessions. So some of those things, right, were the things that were easy to list across the board. And the things that were not easy to list across the board, we then just profiled like for each organization. Yep.
Can I offer, so a lot of the thinking in the beginning was we're doing together as a partnership. And some of the challenges was you had many different organizations delivering very different kinds of services. So depending, and then we did provide like a shared single form, a data collection form to every organization that was consistent, but that form did allow for a certain level of like flexibility and leeway, because for instance, some people were giving out bags or boxes of food. Others were providing healing circles for young people. Others were working with veterans that were coming through their service center. So when we would ask for things like, can you collect, say, age range clients? The people who collect food would say, well, that's difficult. We're busy just handing out boxes of food. We're not asking people to sign on a piece of paper how old they are.
Right.
Whereas even within the food distribution, for one organization, they would kind of measure by the number of turkeys that were given in Thanksgiving because they knew how many they had received. Or another group was weighing it by tons of food because that's how they received it from the food bank. The weight of the food that was received, and therefore they knew how much they gave out. But how do you compare weight versus number of items? So that's where the inconsistency was glaring towards the end of
Mhm.
the year, because we couldn't quite make those cross-agency comparisons, because the data was coming in different shapes and forms.
Yeah.
And I might just add
Yep.
one quick thing to
Yep.
that, which is, when we created the application, similar to what you all are gonna be talking about tonight. When we created the application, we asked, the applicants to tell us what success looks like. So how will you, as the grantee organization, define success?
Mhm.
And so all 14 projects defined it differently.
Mhm.
And so they reported back on those definitions of success as opposed to, you know, the steering committee at the time, you all, the previous version of you all. We didn't define what success looked like. We didn't define what it was, you know, to be better off as a result of this $1 million. We just said grantee, you know, organizations who are out there working with community. What do you need? And what do you think success will look like? So that's the other reason the data didn't align, and it was hard to, in the middle of the project,
Mhm.
all of a sudden come up with like some common metrics. 'Cause we didn't ask that from the beginning. It wasn't baked in from the beginning.
Yeah. I will say though, best practice in philanthropy is asking grantees to share what success looks like for them. So let's be very clear that that is the best practice. You don't want to be descriptive or telling grantees what to do, right? And I want to be on, these are county resources. And we will use county resources to leverage philanthropic resources to have a little bit more flexibility in how we fund organizations and or how we fund organizations. I do want to say I feel like we should continue to ask grantees what success looks like for them. But like if there's 5 things that we want to just say we want to track, so that way they know that within their success metrics, please make sure you track this thing because this is what we want to collect back. And we want to know all the other things, right? So one of the lessons from Sacramento was these organizations knew they do a bunch. And they had some indicators that they were tracking consistently across the board, recognizing that their organizations did way beyond those things that they were just tracking. So I say that to say we don't want to limit organizations, but for us to tell a collective, cohesive story, we should have some anchors. So I'm sorry.
And our office and the lead entity are going to continue to work on evaluation design and also like acquiring evaluation dollars and support so that we can really like show the value of this work. So just so folks know.
Yeah, excellent.
So
Well,
thematically, from this first year, your learnings will give you an opportunity to perhaps maybe find those common ground areas. Since it's the first year, it's initial, so I would think we could pull that data and call through it and say, although they were offering different services, how do those services fit into XYZ category?
I was thinking a lot about that, Pastor Ed. Yeah, you are correct. I have been thinking a lot myself around, okay, within these pillar areas, is there like one thing that we could track, given that we know that they might be doing a whole bunch of others? I don't feel comfortable doing that in a vacuum, right? I think that's things that you all collectively come up with, or whoever is kind of building out the next iteration of this collectively does. But I 100% agree, yes. I also wonder, because y'all are in the middle, about to start year 2, I don't know what your in-between looks like right now, or who's going to be collecting or tracking that information. But whatever comes up from year 2, because I don't know how far you are all along, those will also be lessons to take into the building of. Mm-hmm.
And the fact that Sacramento was 10 years old,
Mm-hmm.
they've had a lot of opportunity to call out some challenges and figure out what is baseline.
And the first probably 2 to 3 years was learning, honestly, like building, learning, adjusting, building, learning, adjusting, right? And then get on okay, we moving this train real nicely now, okay.
So that's an expectation. I would think that there would be a learning curve.
Yes.
That we'd have to have in mind, especially in establishing a lead entity, coming up with these new providers in the process, because it's a level set.
Yes.
So in the interest of time, we have 2 more questions. And then we'll take some questions from the public. I know there was 2 hands raised.
Yeah, so I'll try to keep it pretty brief. I know Brother Willie has something too. So my 2 questions are gonna be kind of geared towards places where you saw success and how we can kind of pour that over the whole program and the other entities or the other I guess like the 14 service providers, for example, that participated here. Like I heard you say, for example, and by the way, I heard you say that like of everybody served, like almost 3/4 were Black people, which I thought sounded pretty impressive to me personally. I wanted to call that out. But I want to know, for example, you mentioned that there was a high utilization of mental health services. I was wondering if you had any theory why that was. And then more broadly, I wondered if you had any thoughts about where one organization did something well. For example, I saw that one of your youth organizations reported back like 87% of their participants said that they felt like they were part of a community and had a connection. And I also hear you saying that that's part of the overall goal, right? So is there a way, for example, for us to take what one area does well and have them report back to everybody else, have everybody kind of cross-pollinate? So those are my 2 questions, which I'll try to sum up quickly as how do you account for the high utilization of mental health services? And then how do we let the entities cross-pollinate what they do well?
Yep. Thank you. The first question was, sorry, say the first question one more time.
How do you account for the high utilization of mental health services?
Yeah. So again, shout out to the number of Black folks served, because that is why I believe having these type of partnerships brings this kind of number, right? Like when you actually partner with organizations who look like you know, who look like the communities in which you want to reach, right? This is across the board. It's not just in Black communities. Asian communities got lots of folks or lots of things that are geared to support Asian community, right? And those things are highly utilized because they feel connected to the community. And so when you have a connection to the community, that's literally why the grantees said they felt good being a part of this cohort, because they were connected to EBCF, who had Black staff who they felt connected to and reflected them. We brought in Black capacity building support to help them, right? So those are some of the wins, right? Being able to invest in the capacities of the organizations. They felt so strongly because they had folks reflecting them to be in that space. That said, I do think that is why folks utilize the services. These organizations had dollars targeted to reach a certain population, and they were very intentional about it. Those were some of the conversations I had early on with people as we were like shaping and landing on the MOU. I'm like, yeah, you can serve everyone. I'm not gonna be mad at you. And we don't want to turn nobody away, because then the county's gonna say something about that. But what strategies are you going to employ to ensure that these resources actually reach Black community, right? And so very, very intentional conversations around how they're going to do that. And I believe that is why we saw the numbers that we saw that way. Like I said, it was Black Women's Health Foundation. Their whole intake form had the question around like whether or not you're Black, because that triggered the funding to be able to support this, right? So like they were able to really target the communities in which we wanted to see reflected here. And I think that was why there was a high utilization. I think there's also a high utilization because we all partner with a lot of mental health providers, right? And so as a result of partnering with mental health providers, they use those resources in targeted communities to get those resources. And so that is why I believe that was the high utilization there. And your second question was?
Briefly, how to enable the entities to cross-pollinate the things they do well.
So love that. One of the things I think you also touched on or asked about in your opening of the question is like, what was the success? I do feel like having the intermediary be able to hold space for folks that do just that. So through the capacity building sessions and a couple different touch points throughout the year where we gathered folks, we were able to seed kind of collaborations, right? People were like, oh, I didn't know about such and such organization. I want to talk to you to be able to do this. Oh, we can partner on this event. Oh, you're doing these healing circles? Can we partner to do, right? So like having the intermediary be able to convene grantees in between the work really helped to create a container for relationship building and collaboration. And I think that is where we're able to cross-pollinate. So within those capacity building spaces, there was a hole at the end where folks had to do pitches to each other, get feedback to each other. And folks felt safe enough to be vulnerable to do that. I was like, when they came in, it's like, I was practicing and I was doing this. I got so excited that they took it so seriously to come in and show up for themselves, but also just demonstrate the impact of their organizations, right? And so in that peer sharing, folks were able to take away the good things, learn from each other, like, oh, I didn't know you did that. I want to learn more about that. But that is where that cross-pollination happened. It was through EBCF really being able to have intentional space for the convenings of the grantees. Otherwise, they all mentioned we wouldn't have gotten together.
I could do a million more things, but we are on a schedule.
I know, I'm sorry, I'm a talker, y'all.
I'm not so sure that we've gone I know we've gone the 10 minutes, but I had two questions related to the services as a grant administrator, I think.
Uh-huh.
And the statement you made earlier about obviously these limited dollars. As a grant administrator, your service you're providing has to do with administering the grant and also assessing the needs. And that's covered as a part of your contract.
Right,
Those
so.
are dollars.
Yeah, there was $120,000 that went to EBCF as the contractor of this grant, and it was to administer the dollars out, the kind of monitoring of the grantees, the relationship building, being able to do the convening, do the capacity building, collect the data, assess the data, develop the report.
Yeah, that basically gets the essence of what I'm trying to go with. At the end of the day, what I'm concerned about is that these programs often come with limited funds. No matter what you're doing, there's limited funds. What I have seen is that the funds does not necessarily get to where it's really needed, or by the time it gets there, the fund pool is so small, you can't do a lot with, like you were saying, $50,000 or $25,000. What can you really expect in terms of services? In addition to that, having a grantee define what the outcome is going to be seems a bit far-fetched to me. Somebody has to define that and tell that grantee, here's what we want you to deliver. Can you do it for these amount of dollars? I'll stop there, but that's an in-depth conversation we need to have. Else we'll find out that these $2 will be gone before we even thought of. We won't have time to try to figure out how to get more money there, and the county is not committed to funding this program for any, we know the timeframe they're gonna cover. So those are my concerns.
Yes, sir. I hear you. And I think I'm a little concerned in that too, because I'm like, oh, we're gonna go into year 2 and we don't have our consistent data thing that we want to track. So, Brother Willie, that is why I stress at least having 5 indicators so that you all can say, this is what we want to track. That doesn't mean organizations aren't doing other things because they're getting funds from other places. They got to, because the money, the investment that is given here is not enough to do what is needed in community. So they are leveraging dollars here to get money from other foundations, from other places. That's why having another partner like an East Bay or another philanthropic partner that can make the connections outside the county funds helps continue investment, right? How do they connect to other philanthropic partners by way of being connected to an East Bay or something like that, right? So I say all that to say, Brother Willie, it would benefit all of us if we did identify a set. I don't want to tell them to do everything, but if there's 5 indicators that you identify to say, we want to track these over the next period of time for these grants, I think that's going to be helpful for y'all. So that again, you can continue to tell a story year by year. In year 2025, it looked like this. Year 2026, it grew this much. It grew this much. Oh, we had a setback, but this is because all these external factors were happening that contribute, right? Like you'll be able to tell that narrative when you have a set of indicators that you're tracking, and I'm gonna stop, because,
And the need is so great out there.
yes,
And so how do you zero in on what the essence with the few dollars that you have?
exactly, and that's what our consultant has shared, like, the grantees will tell you they're gonna do 20 things, and we can't. Now with $50,000, okay, and I'm gonna stop.
Okay, thank you so much. We actually have a question, public comment.
That's actually a member, Dr.
Bruce?
Just really quickly, I wondered, I know it sounds like you've thought a lot about these key indicators that need to be tracked. Did you have any suggestions as to what those might be?
I try to play a little with that, Dr. Mariah. I feel like I would want to sit with it a little bit more, and that's where I don't like to be in a vacuum. And those are the things that I feel like are stronger when we do it in community, right? If there's a small committee or something of folks that say like, let's look at all these things and make meaning together. Because yeah, I was like, maybe we're tracking community belonging and reduced chronic stress and economic security. But then when I said economic security, I was like, well, that could be education, or it could be housing. Like, so like my mind went into a bunch of different places. And so I have been thinking about it, but I feel like I want to do it together.
Thank you.
Any additional comments or questions? Go ahead.
Just want to note that we have inside the RFP performance measures under each of the service categories, suggested performance measures in there already. So we'll see that later, or folks may have seen that already. And that, yeah, so there's measures in the RFP. And we've also done some work looking at the gaps from our service providers. We've also done some work around there on some performance measures. But so there, yeah, we're doing a lot of work around pulling those things together. And so yeah, there'll be some times where we are those things will be implemented a little bit further. And just in the comment about partnering with East Bay Community Foundation, I think it was mentioned just having that intermediary makes it easier on smaller organizations, because if everything went directly through the county, things are often a reimbursement, or just there are much higher barriers for accessing the money. So while in philanthropy, it's a best practice, they're doing, trust-based philanthropy has been kind of the name of the game the last several years, where it's more like, we want to give you the least administrative burden as possible. We also recognize that on the other side, the rest of us, we want to see some rigor, we want to see some numbers. So we're still we've been building out those checks and balances through the various levels of governance.
Yeah.
We have one question in the room. Yeah.
Oh, is it okay? Okay, so for the mental health piece, right? Because I think it's great that Black folks, the majority of the participants you served are Black, right? Has already been stated in the room. And I'm also wondering how you're either tracking or categorizing mental health. And I'll kind of say why I'm asking that, because with the Black maternal and infant health portion, are you guys providing mental health in that, or is that just its own pillar and most of the mental health is going to the behavioral health section?
No, so for the mental, it's in both sections. For the maternal side, Black Girls Mental Health Foundation was funded, and their work was funded to work with Black birthing people. I think in a certain, I don't know if they are pregnant or within 2 years of birth or something like that.
Yeah.
So they were working with birthing people in that pillar.
Okay.
And then within the behavioral health side, there was also
Okay.
youth and other adults, and Healing Spot Collective served very both young people and women and men. Actually, that was something that came through for Healing Spot Collective, that there was such a significant increase in the amount of Black men that access the services. And I didn't show it up in here, but it's in some of the other data. And so I just wanted to name that as well.
Okay, so it is included in the maternal health side. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you very much, Jasmine. Appreciate it.
I love being with y'all.
I think I heard potential action item or ad hoc committee or for us to think about that so we can help work out those things. So if you can capture that data for us, that would be great. As we transition, looking at the clock and looking at the time that we have, I'm offering that we make a slight adjustment. Instead of the next section will call for us having 15 minutes for each group. We want to try to see if we can make that including Q&A. We do 6 and 4. So you do make your presentation, do 6 minutes, and then we take 4 minutes. That'll get us back close to on track for the time. Because I know as I've been our common practice to want to leave at a certain time and we want to get the work done tonight. So can we try that and see how that works? I consent to, somebody let me know if we're open to trying that, please. Just a thumbs up. Great. Yes, ma'am.
Just want to make sure if there's any public comment online.
Do we have any public comment online on the last action item or the last agenda item?
Is there a notification in the, oh no, that's not the chat.
I did have a question. I will just say this, that there was a question in the chat about if there were additional service providers going to be added, and I let them know that we are actually going to be deploying the RFP in the coming months, and that we encourage them to keep coming to these meetings, and that we are currently designing this, and we're actually going to discuss this now.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And thank you again.
Thank you for having me, and I'm so sorry for taking up so much of y'all's time.
We wanted to make sure we allotted enough time for this so we could get some greater understanding. You brought insight. I think that was helpful for all of us, but am I speaking out loud? It's helpful for me, all right?
Yeah.
But thank you so much.
Thank you.
So let us look at the transition now to our next agenda item, which is going to be the ad hoc committee report out.
Thank you, Jonathan.
All right.
See y'all next week.
And what we have listed for the agenda is that we are now looking at the ad hoc committee report out for qualifications and eligibility. You guys ready? Sure.
Should I get away?
Yeah.
Well, I'll try to be efficient with your guys' time, especially working with 6 minutes, but
We risk like Dougie Fresh.
so we reviewed the RFP's qualifications, eligibility, and geographic focus sections. We discussed each topic area with an eye toward the feedback template that Jessica was so good as to circulate for us. We actually got a little bit of context later, including that there is a request for information phase built into the process, which will create a kind of a lower barrier first round for organizations to express interest before the full RFP submission. And this matters for several of the recommendations that we had. One big one that we had when we were talking about edits we recommend for the qualifications and eligibility section, we'd like to see clearer structure and signposting. This was an observation that Dr. Lee had regarding just having subheadings to make things a little easier to follow. We discussed the need to explicitly name unpartnered, non-system involved Black males as a priority subpopulation. This has kind of come up as a theme a couple of times in the course of our discussions. We discussed adopting a kind of a show not tell standard across the entire RFP. This was an observation that Bianca Lachaud had that we kind of realized would really fit well going over the whole RFP. Don't just say, hey, we want to help Black people, but actually show these are the 3 ways that we propose to do it, and that we propose to do it by having the largest population possible. We talked about sustainable funding literacy. This was something that kind of came up as a theme a couple of times. And I think we just kind of heard Jasmine talking about it, the idea that we're gonna need to put more money on it going forward. And so we're gonna want organizations that are able to work with the grant application structure, I suppose. And then most of all, we want to make sure that we make the eligibility requirements more inclusive of Black-led grassroots organizations. We want to be careful that the requirements don't become restrictive in ways that could exclude smaller and newer organizations. And again, I'm just going to speak a little bit to what we heard from Jasmine today, because I think what I basically heard her saying is that the presence of an intermediary organization kind of helps with kind of guiding rather the smaller organizations to be able to kind of meet milestones and do what they need to be able to do. How am I doing time-wise, anybody?
Feel good, keep going.
Okay.
Just halfway.
So those were kind of our top priority recommendations. We also had some further input after the first round of edits where we discussed kind of some specific moves that we could make to try to address some of these things. We talked about adding an implementation partnership and capacity building plan requirement, which would kind of require applicants to describe further how they're going to partner with smaller trusted grassroots organizations while building their capacity over time. The other thing that we discussed, or rather that came out of our discussion, was to require a specific Black African American community provider inclusion and development plan. And I think that basically would entail these applicants being able to articulate cohesively exactly what their plan is to try to engage the communities that we're trying to engage as widely as possible. 2 minutes. I think that's a pretty accurate summary of the main things we came up with. I'm also going to flag, since I have a couple of minutes, just some of the key risks and concerns that we came up with. One that we came up with was the idea that census tract data may not capture all residents. We flagged specific concerns about unintentional or intentional undercounting of Black residents. We talked about the previous observations about not wanting to inadvertently exclude Black males not connected to a female partner or to the system. And then I just want to say one more time, the show not tell approach that we seem to have identified kind of seems to have come up multiple times in terms of making sure that the work is ultimately effective and that we don't just end up with some pie in the sky. Here's what I'm going to do, but I don't really have a plan to do it. I think that's, unless I missed anything that anybody wants to point out for me, I think that's what we talked about, and I'm happy to try to take questions.
30 seconds more to go. You got something else to say?
So anybody here from Contra Costa County? Boy, what a great crowd you are. I'm just kidding. I'm not going to do that. No, just overall, actually, well, I will say one more thing, which was I really valued the opportunity for us all to get on a call together and to discuss what brings us to the work, the unique perspective that we have on the work. And speaking for myself, I personally found it very energizing to reaffirm our commitment to this work and our belief in it and getting it done.
You got it in.
We should have recorded that.
You got it in.
Oh, we are recording, okay.
You got it in. Good job. Thank you very much. All right, we're going to go to 4 minutes for question and answer. Time starts now. Any questions? Comments, suggestions? Hands raised, no hands raised. Good to go? Any questions online?
As a reminder, Walter was just reporting out on qualifications and eligibility, right?
Right.
That was a section that he walked. Okay.
I do have a question, but I'm trying to recount what you said, cause you said it and it made sense, but I can't regurgitate it, but it was something along the lines of, like being involved with the community and like partnering with smaller organizations. Can you expand on that a little bit, please? I'm probably botching what you just said.
No, not at all. So I think in our discussion, we kind of identified a desire to enable more grassroots type organizations to be able to engage with this process and complete this application process and have a chance to be able to, be the lead entity. And so what I was speaking to was the idea that not only did we seem to identify that need, we want to empower the grassroots organizations that are doing the work, but also to amplify that. Jasmine today seemed to tell us basically the same thing, that these grassroots organizations are already filling these gaps and we want to keep enabling them.
But maybe, I don't know if this is to Neris's point. When you mentioned something about more specific outreach or engagement planning, did you mean for program participants or did you mean for smaller organizations like what you're talking?
I meant, great question. I meant for program participants, but I also spoke earlier to the RFI, for the RFI piece that we built in to the process, or I should say you guys built into the process after our conversations. Because I kind of think it, two sides of the same coin, right? Let's bring in more participants and have a good outreach plan, and also let's bring in more entities and have a good outreach plan.
Got about a minute and a half left for this question and answer. Are there any more questions online?
Do you have any TCAB members online who have any?
All right. Good job, Walter. And the team, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Next one that we have up is
Fund distribution, this one? Ms. Leslie?
Yes.
Fund distribution, Chair?
fund distribution.
Service.
We can go to collaboration, accountability, do that last. No, this comes up next. Okay, let's go.
All right, I'm gonna try to be as concise as I can, but we had two jobs, was to look at the fund distribution, so the percentage of dollars that should go to each of the service categories. And then we had to take a look at each of the service categories and make sure that all of the programming and services that we were looking for each of those service categories, all of those definitions and items were met inside of this RFP. So I'll start with the service categories. There are 6 service categories: behavioral health services, housing navigation, maternal health services, reentry and support restorative services, public benefit resources, and then prevention and health checkup screenings. So we took a look at each of those service categories. And for the most part, I really want to give staff their kudos for really detailing and outlining descriptions of services that they wanted for each of those categories, the menu of allowable services that were going to be in each of those categories, and performance measures. There were 2 areas where we had recommendations. And so one was around the maternal health category. We wanted to add in, we were recommending that we explicitly name out men for those services or include it as part of family and maternal health children category. Because otherwise men are only captured in reentry or behavioral health services. So we really wanted to make sure that something was called out in services around fatherhood for men in the maternal health work. So that was one recommendation that we had for that specific category. The other one we had was around our health prevention and treatment category. We wanted to make sure that services around HIV and STI and reproductive health were included in that prevention category because it wasn't called out there. And sorry, there was 3. And then the last one was around the mental and behavioral health services. We wanted to make sure that domestic violence, interpersonal violence, healthy relationship work was also categorized in the behavioral health opportunities as well. So those are our recommendations. Other than that, in each of the service categories, I won't go through all of it, but staff did a really great job of calling out and detailing services that they want to provide in each of those areas. Our second task was to identify the percentage of dollars that should be allocated to each of these service areas. And so we thought about it in 2 buckets. We thought about it in 2 buckets. One was around services that provide core stabilization and high acuity needs. So focus on services that directly stabilize individuals in crisis or high risk situations. And so in that bucket, we said behavioral health services, housing, maternal health, and reentry support should receive 80% of the funds that are being allocated. 80% of the 3.75 million should be allocated to those services. And the second bucket was around access and prevention. And that was really focusing on upstream supports that reduce crisis entry. So taking a look at public benefit navigation and preventative health screening and checkups. We thought that 20% of the dollar allocation should go to those. And so just really trying to make sure that the higher percentages go to the focus areas where we're going to help stabilize individuals. So I got 2 minutes. So if you want, I'll break down where we thought the percentage, where each of those percentages should go. So our top 2 priorities where we said 25, these 2 had 25% of the funds was behavioral health and maternal health services.
I'm just sharing.
You're sharing it? Okay.
We made edits based on what you all said, so.
Okay.
It's probably.
So our top.
For the red.
Okay, so our top bucket said that behavioral health and maternal health should receive 25% of the fund allocation.
Each or combined?
Each. And then reentry and restorative support services should receive 20%.
Okay.
Then we had housing and navigation services should receive 15%. And of course, housing is a hard thing to tackle. And really housing would take the whole 3.75 million. But we don't have money to build buildings, but we know that navigation services to help stabilize individuals with, supporting with rent vouchers, navigation services are important. But there's only so much we can do there with housing. So we put 15% there. And then the other 20% went to public and resource navigation. And then the other 10% to prevention and healthcare checkup. So those are our recommendations for the allocation of funds and how it should be distributed.
So 15 for public benefit and 10.
I thought it was supposed to be 10 for both public
Oh,
benefit.
10 and 10.
10 and 10.
I'm gonna go make some edits before you see it again. Okay.
And time. Hold on.
Micah.
Yeah, good.
Okay, I just thank you for the very thorough presentation on this. This is gonna be a good question. I don't know how much detail you can provide now, but I'm just curious. How did you determine the percentages that were going to be allocated for each of those areas? What was like the justification or rationale for the percentages?
So our rationale was looking at each of those categories and saying, what are services that people need right now? Like what are immediate services or what are the most needed services? and taking a look at the needs assessment that they had already given, the information that they had already given us from the needs. The top needs were around behavioral health services, housing, maternal health, and reentry support. So that is how we were like, we need to put, and those need to be our top priority, like 80% of these funds need to go here. And then just breaking down, where's the next priority area? Everywhere we talk through, behavioral health is number one. So of course, behavioral health, we need to make sure that the allocation of dollars. I mean, we're trying to figure out the percentages to like evenly distribute. But we were really looking at the needs assessment that they had, call outs, from the community. And so that's where we just determined kind of this even breakdown of dollar allocation. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, I just, one other thing that came up in our group was not that benefit navigation or that like preventative services is not as important, but rather than subsidize the county for services that they're already providing and that they will be providing to this network, really, those are usually services that are as a part of a menu of other work that folks are doing. So really to focus on new services that could be within that, if that makes sense.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you both.
And just for clarity, real quick, the percentages, I may not have tracked it correctly. You said 25% for behavioral health?
25% for behavioral health, 25% for maternal health, 20% for reentry support, and then 15% for housing navigation.
So that's 85% total. And then so.
Okay, so
What about
then,
the last two? Public health, they're still 10% each, public health and preventative health?
I think, yeah, 10 for public benefit, and then the rest will be for prevention, health, and care checkup.
Okay, so 5%.
Yeah.
We'll make that check.
Okay, so then that means it's 85% for those core stabilization, high risk needs, 15% for access and prevention.
Oh, that's,
So,
Let's work with them.
yeah, okay.
And we thought about too, for African American community, the strongest things are around behavioral health and maternal health. That's where we're seeing the highest disparity. So wanting to make sure that those had the highest amount.
Okay.
So I don't know if anybody has.
We have a question first in the back and then.
Sorry. So with maternal health, I'm just wondering, so you know the lens I'm coming from is clinical. When I hear you talk about the relationship dynamics and behavioral health, I'm just wondering, is that something that will be also included for maternal health? Because sometimes, you know what I'm saying, like if it's a couple, they might need help with relationship dynamics. So I'm just wondering, will some of that like kind of spill over or merge into itself from behavioral health and maternal health?
I think definitely so, because inside of the maternal health, they talk about co-parenting, co-parenting workshops, postpartum support, postpartum doula services and doula services throughout pregnancy. And we know that all of those things can touch on the behavioral health aspect too as well.
And housing too. Like I run into that a lot sometimes with clients where housing is a primary problem and they have a due date coming.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
okay.
So that's what, that we thought about all those things. And we also, we really thought about housing, when we put that percentage for housing, you really have to be, for the organizations that are going to do housing, they really have to be set up to help with like housing navigation.
Yeah.
Like I said, like we can't go buy and build affordable housing with these dollars, but we can make sure that organizations that can help get people into homes or give out support with housing vouchers and things like that and stabilization. We know there's only a few people in the game that can do that.
Okay.
Thank you, Leslie. It's time. We have any comments on the phone or we have public comment at the end?
I think Nettie has a question.
Nettie, you have something?
Yeah, just very quickly, like Jasmine said, there's the trauma informed, where do we have that? Is that under behavioral or do we have it on both?
I think it's all, you can take care of both of them. So if you take a look at the RFP in the behavioral health section, they kind of list out all of the required service activities. So I think we're going to cover trauma-informed care in our behavioral health category.
That's a big chunk.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll show you where, I guess, we'll show you in a little bit where we made some of these.
My question is everyone in agreement on the percentage of dollars distributed through these categories? Or is there, I mean, those are our recommendations of where we think the dollars should be distributed. I don't know if everyone agrees with that, but.
Yeah, and that's a great question, and we have several proposals, and so we've added them as they've come in. But before the end of the night, after we hear, we do need to go and make sure and we vote and just clarify that the TCAB supports all of the proposals that came from the ad hoc work groups.
And that group also made like recommendations around how many awards per area too.
Yeah.
So we'll hear that at the time that we get the motions and the floor to get things done. So there'll be some time for discussion there as we get through. All right.
Question?
I just wanna, Lauren,
Yeah, about the housing navigation. Was that something that staff came up with as far as that category? Or was that, what did that housing navigation?
I was reflected in the survey of community members and what one of the priority needs were, where the most percentage of folks said that was a priority need.
Okay. So I'm helping the county with its strategic plan to reduce and homelessness. And, you know, we all know that we are like 38% of the folks who are touching that system, but we only make up 8 or 9% of the folks in the county. And just so we know, you know, with the stuff that's happening at the federal level, the housing authority is basically anticipating having to let 550 to 700 households. Because they're gonna have to basically put them into transitionary housing because the permanent housing funding is not going to be there. And one of the problems that I'm dealing with is the navigator to cliff issue. You know, we have navigators navigating folks to places and there are no resources there. And I would hate to see these resources be wasted in the same way. That we are pointing folks to places where there's a cliff there, there is no bridge there. And the county already and other nonprofits are already doing housing navigation. So I think we need to have a discussion about that 15% going to housing navigation. In a situation where over the next couple of years, the places to navigate people to are going to be getting smaller. And so no need to throw money away navigating folks to places that don't exist.
I'll just mention that in that group, I wish Pat was here with us, but she was also mentioning having experience, as I know we both do in that work, that, you know, that's a kind of a disappointing category because it is, you know, you would be getting folks into the HMIS system. It's a universal system. There's already many providers who are basically signing folks up, thousands of people on a list. I believe we heard it takes 18 months from the time you get on that list to get into housing, and that's pretty much only if you have some financial resources. So I appreciate you for lifting that up. In our deeper notes, we had discussed that a little bit. But just in the interest of time, we weren't like lifting up everything, but thank you for noting that. And that was something that was brought up by some other service providers who had seen that cliff as well.
And I'll add, that's why we prioritized it as number 4 when we were distributing the funds, because we were having those same conversations around making sure resources weren't wasted, but giving a reasonable percentage to support.
There will be time for some discussion when we put the motion on the floor. So if you'll write your notes down at this particular point in time, and we can address the additional questions for this topic once we get there. So now we can move to the last and final group who has been waiting patiently. And I'm gonna start the clock right now. You got 6 minutes. Let's go.
Good evening. So our group was collaboration and network requirements. We had a very detailed discussion. Thank you, Jessica, for joining. You had a lot of good things to add. So two areas we wanted to focus on was the language, on page 15. State organizations are awarded through the RFP will be expected to engage in collaborative activities and partnerships. Our group discussed the concerns that the word expected may unintentionally communicate that collaboration is optional, or recommended rather than essential to the success of the implementation. We expressed that expected can be interpreted as suggestion rather than a standard, and we wanted to create a standard across the board for collaborating, and we all agreed that collaboration was necessary. It says, we stated that applicants may choose not to fully engage in collaborative efforts if there is no clear accountability tied to it. There could be inconsistent participation, which can weaken the network-wide coordination and impact. We recommended to consider changing the language from expected to engage to required to engage in. And this would establish a consistent baseline expectation for all funding providers and also reinforce that collaboration is a core operational requirement and not an optional enhancement, and would also create stronger accountability and alignment across organizations participating in the network. And then the second was revisiting the language partnership, or sorry, revisiting partnership language, which was on page 21. And so from there, the language there is maintains partnerships with public agencies, community-based organizations, or other entities in successful delivery of services. Our group discussed how the term maintain partnerships may not fully capture the quality of partnerships, the effectiveness of collaboration, or the actual impact partnerships have within the community. There was also some concern that may treat partnerships as a checkbox instead of actually building partnerships and engaging in meaningful partnerships, but just checking them off as something they've done. It was also a concern that lists organizations without active collaboration, so they're not actively working with others. It was just something that they did in the past. And then also maintain relationships in the name only without demonstrating meaningful engagement or shared outcomes. We recommended to revise the language to emphasize demonstrated effectiveness and accountability. So maybe demonstrates maintenance instead of demonstrates maintenance, demonstrates meaningful and active partnerships. This would shift the focus from checking off a box to demonstrating how they function and encourage evidence-based collaboration to better distinguish authentic partnerships. And that was our summary of what we've discussed for collaboration.
You have minutes left, is there anything else?
We have 7 so.
All right. So. Let's go, we've got 4 minutes for question and answers. Clock starts now. Questions? Comments, suggestions? At least you get a fire for questions. Come on. All right. Any staff have anything want to add on this, or we have any questions or comments on the line? Straightforward.
I have a question real quick. So, regarding, elevating the language around collaboration from expected to required, what would the, accountability structure that you recommend, like, tell like, how do we hold people accountable to that type of collaboration? And what is the consequence for folks not doing it? Curious if you had discussion on it.
I know there was some discussion that it couldn't be left up to us, like it would be up to, I think, the lead entity into how they would hold them accountable to maybe partner with others or making sure that they're actively engaging in partnership and collaboration.
And I think that
That's probably something, I was part of that as well. That would be part of a co-design process that, as this network, begins to take shape in year 2 and year 3 and begin to implement some other things, like, for example, some of the things I saw that was missing but I saw was mentioned in the slide was community feedback or client feedback. We got basically a report back from the what do you call them?
Grantees.
Yeah, the grantees, yeah. So we got a self-report from the grantees, but I want to hear from the people that they served. That's the real evaluation as far as I'm concerned. But, the grantees can talk about their goals and whether or not they met their goals, but as far as the actual outcome and the actual impact, so in year 2, I would like to see if they can try and figure out a way to build that in and have that become a regular part of the feedback loop. Yeah.
In addition to that, in education, as we design training and facilitate it, there's what they call a Kirkpatrick model. It's a 5-step model. You can take a look at that and get some ideas as to how to do it. It talks about if you check the box, you did the work. Once you did the work, you follow in the people that participated. Then you see if they're implementing what's there. Then you see what the impact is overall. And then the 5th step, I can't remember what it is, but how it overall, so you can use a model such as that to determine the feasibility or the degree in which things were taken back. So it's a full circle, almost like 360 type feedback.
I want to come back to Peter's point about how do we get entities to internalize the need to interact with each other and learn from each other. I'm thinking 2 things. One, we could make it an affirmative requirement of the application process that these entities understand that this is part of the call, is that you guys are going to work together and learn from each other. Maybe there's a way we can also have the applicants speak to how they would do that. Like, you're in X field. What do you think you might be able to learn from someone providing services in Y field? We want to try to draw in kind of this empty cup student mind mentality. We don't want folks that are too cool for school thinking that they know everything that they're doing where they're doing. I mean, that's great, right? But also we want them to be able to cross-train and take from each other.
That was one of the questions that I had when I wanted to ask Jasmine was, did she see a framework for capacity building in areas of priority so that so much of the work doesn't have to be carried by the central hub? What does capacity building of the network look like so that it kind of begins to work by itself? The hub has its role, but it's not like if the hub wasn't there, this whole thing would fall apart. The business infrastructure, yeah, but the way these folks work together would continue to operate even if the central hub wasn't there.
And maybe we use a process that was used. What does collaboration look like to you? So then we make sure that they at least meet their determination of what collaboration is. And then we make a determination how we can expand that to make it even greater. Because some smaller entities may have limitations and they don't see top of the hill, but somebody else at the top of the hill can then see down the hill. And the ones that will have more consciousness in the process will be responsible for reaching down and helping lift the others up. And the others will be also responsible for reaching up, trying to get some help. And so it makes it a joint partnership type thing. All right.
I just wanted to address that. This conversation that we're having around collaboration. So in the application on the RFP and Under agency approach, there are two questions that may need to be edited, but sort of are getting to what this most recent conversation was. And the two questions are this, that we ask applicants to respond to. So this community-based organizations awarded with this RFP will serve as the initial cohort of service providers within the wellness network. How do you see your agency working in partnership with the network? That's one question. We can always edit. And then the other question, to sort of get at what they're already doing related to partnerships, is identify partnerships your agency has with public agencies, community-based organizations, or other entities that will enable you to successfully deliver services. But I just want to say there's a start. If there's a piece that you feel like is missing from our conversation, we can work on it, we can edit it, but
And we did directly,
we made some other edits.
we made those edits that were recommended by that committee as well to change the language. And also any of the capacity building suggestions that we came up with during the RFQ work and this, we've been keeping them to like in a place to understand that as we continue to work on our capacity building work for next time, or as we create work for the lead entity or, more specifications, that we're going to continue to make sure that like we're thinking about cross-sector collaboration and other ways to do learning communities beyond just like kind of the workshopping of capacity building we've done so far. We'll try to strengthen that.
Just a quick comment, trying to attract community-based organization as grantees. I suspect that there are going to be limited capacities that's coming with them. There may be those who have worked with major organizations that provide the same service that could be a part of their resume saying that we work in partnership with this organization, even though we're the lead. It's almost like a lead with a partner that has more strength, but the partner who have the most strength does not necessarily fit the community need. So I'm just wondering, would that not be included if I'm proposing to do this small community-based organization, but use a reference from a partner that I work with, that I'm working with, that will help strengthen my weak areas?
So you're not talking about like a fiscal sponsor, you're talking about something kind of different.
No, not a fiscal sponsor. I'm saying is that using myself as a personal reference, I was a small business in the engineering profession. And I teamed up, had a working relationship with a stronger firm that provided the same service. So I was able to draw experience in terms of my meeting the qualification to get the project. So it's something along that line.
So what you're saying is there's somewhere in the application that gives space for someone to say, this is the additional support, mentorship, TA support that I would bring into this.
Right. It's okay for them to make that reference in terms of qualifying. And I'm saying that would strengthen that particular. Then the other part of it had to do with the funding and financing of the grantee who comes with limited financing capacity, and how do we address they qualified, but I can see that they don't have the financial wherewithal to carry this. Is that I don't know that I've heard that discussion in terms of qualifying grantees.
No, I'm keeping that Cassandra. Yeah, we have been, Cassandra over there has supported us, and she's done contracting with the county, for a while. So we do have a step in the process that does ask for them to demonstrate their fiscal ability, their fiscal strength. And so they will have to meet certain criteria in order to contract with the county, because we're not talking about the intermediary anymore. We're not talking about East Bay Community Foundation. These organizations are gonna have to now contract directly with the county. They're gonna have to have certain insurance requirements at a certain level. They're going to need to be a vendor. They're gonna need to have their 501c3. They're gonna have to meet those requirements.
Sure. And then what you're talking about is a lead agency.
I'm sorry.
A lead agency, that concept would be a stronger organization, to use your word, would be the lead agency, and they would agree to be the fiscal sponsor perhaps for the smaller org, and then they could apply together. Is that what you're?
Well, I was looking at, if the lead agency is going to be contracted to run it, I'm not so sure that as a,
So you want to flip it. You're talking about the organization that needs TA to be
well,
the applicant, but they would say, hey, I've got Big Brother here who's gonna be helping me out.
right, which would not be.
Yeah.
That's what I guess the only other piece that comes to my mind is that, a lot of times you can't get a smaller service provider even through the initial process, even though they may be in the community doing work there. So how does the county, how do you deal with that? And is there room to deal with that in this process?
So that's kind of what the role of East Bay Community Foundation, why that was so pivotal, is that if you want to contract with the county, there are certain administrative and bureaucratic requirements such as a certain insurance, insurance that is like up to $1 million. You have to show a fiscal audit of your previous year's budget, your finances that can cost the organization up to $7,000, $8,000, $9,000 to do. That locks out these smaller grassroots organizations that you're just talking about, Willie, to even engage in that process in the first place. So then by having like an administrative liaison like East Bay, we were able to arrange it where they had MOUs with the county, but a lot of those administrative hurdles weren't there anymore because East Bay was taking on the liability as kind of the umbrella organization. In this arrangement, that's not what we're proposing. We are proposing that organizations who are service providers will have to engage with contracting with the county as typically is done. So therefore, we do anticipate that there will be smaller organizations that may not be able to engage for those reasons, because they may not be able to have, like, check off those financial stability or financial requirements.
Just one quick follow-up. Will this organization provide for how to do business in this environment kind of workshops?
Which organization? The lead entity? Right now, we're talking about
the lead entity.
So I think the lead entity's role is to help develop a capacity building agenda or learning curriculum for the network. And it can include things like how to just engage and apply for funding with big systems like counties. It could help build that capacity. But again, we want the lead entity as well as community and folks to help build that learning agenda with them in terms of what are folks really interested in. And it could include that. It's not, we're not.
Yeah, I was just suggesting that having like workshops prior to submitting the RFP as how to do business with us, because a lot of times smaller entities don't quite understand how to navigate doing business, so they clearly understand that maybe I don't qualify because I can't meet these requirements before they spend their time.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that kind of I think that capacity building is necessary. Yes.
So then on that, it sounds like, and then I could ask my question, it sounds like to apply for the RFP, you would have to be like a CBO or an organization that's like a 503C, correct?
Yes, I mean, the way that the county has done in the past, that if you are not a 501c3, that's when you then engage a fiscal sponsor. A big organization that is a 501c3, they would be the one who applies on your behalf, takes on the financial liability, but then that smaller organization would carry out the work.
Oh, you just answered my second question, which was gonna be, then how do smaller businesses like Mr. Walter is mentioning, or even sole proprietors that are on the ground kind of doing the work in the community, get involved with the project? But you just answered it, because it sounds like then you would partner with a bigger organization that takes the financial responsibility, that has the insurance and the CBO establishment already. Okay.
And we can also offer this, right? Something that we've been doing for the last year plus is talking to philanthropy and community foundations, like an East Bay Community Foundation, who are much more flexible in who they contract with. So it's like, what if we're able to align around the goals? So we're all aligned around the priority populations, the target categories of service, and the outcomes that we're shooting for. But if the county's restricted by these financial requirements, then maybe, then the philanthropy can be the ones who fund the smaller organizations because they don't require the same level of requirements. So then that's how we can then leverage each other's funding, widen the pot, and engage more grantees. But that's a conversation that's ongoing, and support actually from all of you to help us, convince some of these philanthropy folks to get on board this train.
That's a whole different.
Just a couple of notes, we are gonna have an information session as well as a bidders conference, so there will be a couple touch points for community organizations to interact. And the RFP will be open for 8 weeks. Which is a little bit longer than the county normally does, so there'll be time for like questions to be asked and answered during that time. We're also considering folks being able to have subcontractors within the grant. We're also looking to see what the policies and legal implications are about service providers who are doing business as, or who are LLCs, who are providing these kinds of services, who are reflective of the community, so that we're just creating like a wider net cast for these services. So just wanted to mention those things, and I think that's it for now. I know Walter had a hand, and then Kendra has some.
Super quick, going to a point we were talking about getting folks to talk a little bit more about how they collaborate with other entities. I think we could just, I won't get you to scroll back to the question that you were on before, but we could just add a line where we're having folks respond to how they're already collaborating with other organizations. I think we could also just add a line where we ask them to identify gaps that they think they'd be able to fill interacting with other organizations if they were to get this funding. I think that would kill two birds with one stone, because it would make them show that they're thinking about how they could do more collaboratively with some different resources.
And just to piggyback off of what Walter was just saying there about collaboration, Kim's not here, but he said something in our collaboration meeting that we might want to have it in the application somewhere, that if all your partnerships are 6 months old, then you're not very collaborative. And so maybe if there's some indication about how long or length of time your collaborations.
We're going to show you in a minute where we addressed all the recommendations, and one of them was specifically about that. I think it might have come from your group, about continuous length of service in the community, and just a little bit more of demonstrating. There was a term called show not tell. They gave some different questions that came out of one of the groups, and then also I remember I was in that group as well, so I heard a lot about that. And so we'll show you here in just a second some of the ways that we've tried to remedy these recommendations. And so we'd love to hear if they address creating a more accessible application.
That being said, one of our goals for tonight was to make sure that we were able to adopt the recommendations that were placed forward, and how we can get that done. So the question is, at this particular point, you want to go ahead and make the presentation of where you put it, and then we can come back to the conversation about accepting the recommendation so we can move forward. Now, I wanted to commend you all because we were 25 minutes behind schedule earlier when I asked to adjust it. We had it down to 4 minutes. Now we're back up to 15 minutes behind schedule. So I just want to let you know, the discussion is good. We appreciate all of the input because this is great stuff that we're doing. And so we put the time in. We want to hear where the proposals go, and then we'll come back to the discussion and the moving of the acceptance. And then we got a couple more things to do. I know it's at 7:32. Some of you are looking at your clocks. But please allow the time that we might move forward to get things done.
Yes, we'll do our best here. And again, so many of the recommendations are just very thoughtful. The discussions have been really thoughtful, so I appreciate it. And we've done our best here. So
Now it's here.
yeah, we talked a lot about the so here are the direct allocations over 3 years. Put into here, we know that we have that we're going to place hold for maybe a little more discussion around one of those subjects, but these were directly made inside of the.
Just inform everything that's a little corrected.
Yeah. Everything, there's a lot of red because it's just so that we can all see who's changing what. So here in the maternal and infant care, there was that recommendation made to basically change it to family, maternal, and child adolescent health, the FMCA kind of, what was that? Whoops.
Right.
Yeah, so that was like essentially incorporating the recommendations from two different groups to make sure that there's space for men and for families. We did go ahead and change that. And we also added Black fathers specifically into that space. We've also added Black men in other areas of the spaces.
Sorry, we're going back.
I know, I'm like, wait,
Let's
where you at?
let's
We start from the top?
let's do this one. We have two different edited documents that we will combine, but Jessica and I today went back through everyone's recommendations to make sure they were there. That's why it's the separate one. Okay.
So for behavioral health, we added isolated men, underemployed men, experiencing health disparities, and men disconnected from traditional service systems, into that bucket to make sure that that was a focus area. We also added there in the behavioral health piece, the HIV and sexually transmitted infections, reproductive prevention treatment, education empowerment services, domestic violence, interpersonal violence, and healthy relationship and empowerment services. We've actually, for some of these, we've put them in multiple places because as we discussed, depending on who the service provider is, it's actually appropriate to be in multiple places. So there it was in behavioral health. In housing navigation, we've also made sure to explicitly add African-American males, isolated men. So kind of this group of forgotten brothers. And I know that folks know that along the trajectory of this advocacy for this work, Black men have come up as like a focus that we need to focus on. And as was noted, that focus became just really specific to certain populations and actually ended up leaving out others. So we tried to make sure we added others here. We changed the family, maternal, child, and adolescent health pending everyone's understanding. In there, we added Black fathers. And in the activities, we also added again, advocacy and education services around fatherhood, parenting, co-parenting, doula for dads. And again, added HIV and sexually transmitted infections and reproductive health work, empowerment services and domestic violence, IPV work, and healthy relationship education in that space. In the reentry support services, of course, we also just like lifted up African-American men, but also recognizing that we might find men who need reentry services and other needs, like if someone's, underemployed, possibly because maybe their record is impending, has impacted their career trajectory. So, and then we also made sure to add in the preventative health more emphasis on HIV and sexually transmitted infections, reproductive health, prevention and treatment and education empowerment services. Also domestic violence, interpersonal violence. And, one thing that was a really important note from Pat, who has like a history of doing work in those areas, is she was saying like, the incidents are so high, but the like outcomes are so low for actually like receiving those things. And we know we all were equally offended when that was not a big focus of the county. So we know as folks that is an important thing to add into our work. And we added fathers and partners specifically as a focus area in the.
So that was the family.
The family work. And then the other thing was around the census tracts. It's come up over and over again about making sure that, yes, we want to prioritize these census tracts, but we want to make sure that that we're not excluding other places where African-American Black folks can be served. So we made sure to change that, as well as the required to engage piece. We made sure to also note that organizations without prior county contracts can apply, and that fiscal sponsor relationships are there. So just trying to make more access for folks to apply. Again, we're working with county council to find out more about if folks who are doing business as or an LLC who are doing these kinds of services, for example, a service provider like a licensed clinical social worker or someone like that, who doesn't have a nonprofit. And then there was a suggestion to have like more subcategories in this section, so I just took a stab. I wrote at adding like a couple of subsections. So one was expertise, one was demonstrated capacities, just to kind of break up the flow of that. And then there was also a suggestion that, you know, that there's basically the people use boilerplate language, like just like, we love the community and we're all over, you know, so that basically there was a suggestion to like have people do more demonstratable answering. So it says that for the purpose of this RFP, this requires verifiable evidence of specific relationships, partnerships, and engagement histories in such neighborhoods. And back to the rubric, we have some additional notes around that.
I think now, let me
So
go.
now we're in the application.
Sorry, y'all. I can't remember if it's this document. Okay, so now, hold on one second. That was just the comment, but we did make. What page is that? That's page 18. Okay, so don't get dizzy. I'm gonna scroll down to page 8. There we go. So now we're in the application section. Okay, so we wanted to get more specific. We used the feedback from the groups to ask more specific questions.
So we did add, how many years of continuous presence has your agency had in the priority census tracts? And how has your agency established community trust? So expanding the questions to really have folks show what work they're doing for real. We've added, just right now, I had to identify gaps you'd be able to address through collaboration with other entities in the network. Thank you, Walter. And also for folks to identify how long their agency has had these partnerships. And just so you know, part of the application does include a referral piece where you can get references from contracts you're currently engaged in or have been in the last year.
I'm wondering if that's the mechanism through which folks can say, this will be the mentor relationship that will help provide some guidance or support through a letter.
Yeah, probably, that would be the best way, to me.
So in the service description area, there was, the comment from the ad hoc group was that this was pretty generic, discuss strategies for maintaining sustained engagement. And the recommendation was to add the number. So name at least 3 viable outreach strategies to pull in the widest slice of the Black community possible. That was we can edit, that was the language. And then again,
Please share specific verifiable evidence of community embeddedness, trust, and impact. And so gives folks an opportunity to answer that. And then there were also some recommendations, like instead of just saying that, you know, we're culturally competent, we've been trained in Blackness, they can say what percentage of your staff and leadership have lived experience in the proposed service categories, and please describe the composition of your board. We've had to do that for applications that our office has applied as well. So yeah, just to give, you know, folks an opportunity to be able to demonstrate a little bit more than just saying out loud. We also shifted the scoring rubric to have more points for the relevant history and more.
The specific thing there was
that the administrative pieces were outweighing actual community trust and relationships. So we also changed the points around agency approach and agency overview to include those history, that relationship. And added those qualifications around lived experience, staff expertise, board composition. It went down, but we're asking for those specifics as well. So we're getting them to demonstrate it without weighing it over the actual approaches.
we had to find points, so we just took it from budget summary, but again, this is recommendation. Y'all can weigh in on it, but that's how we found extra points. We took it from there. And I think that's all, right? Yep, because the rest is just other procedures. So there we have your recommendations, all there. I do think we should open it up because there were big questions. I think one of which Leslie raised, which is like, do you all agree? I mean, there were many questions. So actually, first of all, do you have questions about the edits that we just shared before we jump into like some decision making?
Questions about the edits? Yes.
So I feel good about the edits and I want to just go ahead and jump to a conversation it sounds like we're gonna have to have pretty soon. Which is whether we feel good about the percentages that the committee came up with. My position on that is I respect that you guys took a stab at it and tried to apply any kind of rationale or rubric. And so to the extent you guys did that in the first place, I think that's a great starting point. I don't see any reason not to adopt your recommendations and then maybe have some mechanism to, revisit if there's a need to. But at least to the extent you guys got the ball rolling, I don't see a reason not to go with that.
So is that a recommendation that we can vote on that one right now by consensus? Or do we have to have individual vote?
Do you wanna, vote at the end on the complete? My recommendation would be,
That was my attempt to get where you're going.
okay,
I just want to make a comment before we vote, though,
Okay.
about these percentages.
Well,
okay.
we need a
Yeah.
motion. Anyway, go ahead.
So I concur with Walters. You guys did a great job taking a stab at this, so I won't be too redundant on what he said. The only thing that gives me pause is still the percentage that is applied to the preventive health care, the checkups and screenings. I think that we need to consider the lens of COVID and the impact that it's had on the Black or African American communities when it comes to testing for STIs, for STDs, for HIV, not just testing, but also treatment. I feel very uncomfortable with 5%, just based upon my knowledge in the space that I work in. And I want to respectfully challenge and take more of an equitable lens when we look at all of these priority areas. I know that there are obviously some that have greater weight, like behavioral health services is definitely one that should dominate in terms of the percentages. But because there are so many common threads through which you can see preventive health, like STI and STD treatment or screening, I mean, they fall into housing, they fall into maternal and child health, they fall into there's a lot of overlap, but we can't ignore the fact that the incidence rates for multiple demographic groups within the African American and Black community are significantly impacted by this. So the single digit gives me significant pause. I just wanted to bring that to the table.
Yeah, I want to say that one of our discussion points was what service providers are out there providing those services. That
Seems like there's very few.
at a level that would make an impact. So we were that's what we sort of talked about, like, could we really increase our relationship with the county departments that are supposed to be doing that and have that be the focus? Just because specifically culturally competent services in those realms, we felt like we didn't know that there were enough like service providers that would actually even apply or be there.
There's nothing.
There's not.
And
Well,
that in mind.
That's the only reason why.
You have
we
a
feel-
recommendation for a change in the percentage.
I would almost I hate to demote, so to speak, public benefit resource navigation, but that. I'll say it.
That belongs to the county.
But
It's almost built, it's almost a system in itself. I'm trying to articulate this the best way I can to justify taking.
Dr. Nichols and, Leslie, and then I'll ask the question.
I just want to say the things that are going to happen with HR1 and the impact of people having to renew their Medi-Cal and renew their Medicare. I think we have to have some stake in the game around re-enrollment for those things that are essentially going to affect everybody regardless, of their status. Because our seniors, people on Medi-Cal are going to have to re-enroll every 6 months, so twice a year.
I have it, sorry. Yeah, that's a great point. And I just have because we have a subject matter expert in the room around STI, HIV. I didn't hear the answer to the question, do community-based organizations provide those services that you're talking about, or is that the healthcare system? Because
It's both, but specific to the county, I would be remiss if I didn't ask the question.
yeah.
Where is this happening in the county? It's not even happening at the county health department. We saw that very clearly.
Yeah, so, and
They're not
the only reason
even-
I'm asking, cause they're not eligible to apply healthcare systems for this funding. But a part of this network, our goal as a whole is to challenge the systems, like that is a part of the work. This RFP is, we're trying to get money into community-based organizations' hands who can directly provide services. Now, for services that are not, that are the responsibility of the healthcare system, like the county or other healthcare system partners, right? That's work that this lead entity, along with our office, is gonna go, and with community voice, is gonna go and say, hey, as a part of this, you're part of this ecosystem, you have to answer. You need to show up to these community meetings and let people know how you're gonna improve health outcomes. Like, you're a part of this charge, just like community-based organizations are. So it is a part of, I mean, it's not reflected in, it's a part of this initiative as a whole. It's a part of our goal as a whole to really hold systems accountable. You know, we're talking about this in like mini chunks and sections, so sometimes like that bigger picture I know gets watered down, and we need a lead entity desperately so we can start moving forward on this work. Okay, but I'm gonna keep it, I just wanted to make sure that whoever this money, like, we just wanna make sure that we're not putting funding in a pot that a community-based we're just gonna have less money sitting there, is all I'm saying, if a community-based organization can't do that, so.
I was wondering if you knew, like, because in my mind, I was thinking like CalPET, like I'm thinking of organizations I know that aren't like quite in this region.
Yeah, there's like Getting to Zero.
Are they here?
Yeah, Getting to Zero, it's in San Francisco. The Public Health Department.
We hear from Walter and
Willie.
William, sorry.
I mean, you can always hear from me, but.
Well, I was gonna say, a part of the functions of ORESJ was to bring the community input into a section of ORESJ, helping to hold the county services department accountable. So, and I also was thinking in terms of this small pot of money that's coming to this community-based organization, would that be more in terms of things that can be to educate people so you can prevent it, as opposed to trying to repair situation that's already there, because these services in the county has got to do what they got to do. And they're not functioning very well based on some of the feedback we hear from people who are complaining. I go to the county for this service, they're supposed to be provided, and I'm not getting it. So I'm thinking this little pot of money, to me, leans more toward the preventative. The old adage saying, and also it's better than the pound cure, you know the saying, but that's cliché. But I'm just simply saying, this small pot of money got to help educate people so that they can get the service that they need, and not most certainly provide the service from a grassroots level, but in the area that.
We did try and word it like that too, around education and empowerment.
Yeah.
Yeah, to your point, we did try and word it around like prevention, awareness raising.
And I think that's where community-based organizations play the biggest role, is in prevention and education and
Yes.
in those classes and workshops.
I do agree with the work that you guys put in. Some of the percentage I wasn't clicking with, but I'm supporting forward with it.
Well, there aren't many Black-led groups in Contra Costa County that are providing research and evidence-based health education.
That's true.
There really are not.
Mm-hmm.
I know the organization that I'm with is the only provider for diabetes education for Contra Costa County Health Plan. So the county itself isn't doing it.
Well,
You know, so we do need to find a way to expand and increase the capacity, not just for the organizations, but to bring on more organizations who can do that work.
I agree. Yeah, I'm working with a doctor now who's coming back to the practice, but he's going into that arena, educating and informing and making sure people understand services.
So back to the question about.
Oh, yeah, percentages.
Percentages. Do we make an adjustment? What is the recommended adjustment that we make? Increase that, decrease something else, that's the only way we can increase it. So what would we consider something that's decreasable? And is that amount, that 5%, earmarked and designated for community-based organizations to do the things that we just talked about, training, planning, educating, those types of things.
I think that's low for me, but I'm not the person to turn to. It's just what I thought that maybe a little low side.
My question is, what adjustment is acceptable on that, since we're trying to move this forward? Is there a recommendation for the adjustment? Since we feel it's low, what may be an adjustable area? And back to the committee that made the presentation, do you see a way to make the adjustment? Lauren, you got a hand up?
Yeah, housing navigation, because, public benefits can cut that, like Leslie was talking about, because they got a shortage of benefits, people who work for the county already in HR1. People are going to lose their benefits simply because they won't get an eligibility worker fast enough. But it doesn't apply as much, I think personally, from what I know about the housing space and housing navigation. Now, I didn't fully understand what you said about housing navigation being number 4.
It was just when we were just based on the percentages and we were prioritizing the categories.
Okay, right, with these right here.
Yeah, housing fell for number 4 because of a lot of the reasons you talked about, but we still felt that it was part of those services that help stabilize. So I don't know if it's take 5% from housing and put it in preventative health care.
That'd be 10 and 10. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Is that an acceptable adjustment by consensus? Yes. Housing navigation to 10 and move preventative healthcare to 10.
Better.
Should I do that?
Is that acceptable, not acceptable? Can we agree to do that based on what we have that we've heard already?
Yeah, based on what we've heard already.
I agree with that. I hate to throw another question at us, but just from like an equity lens, is there a minimum in terms of a dollar amount that we feel that every one of these service areas should receive? Can we start there? Before we think in terms of percentages? I'm just throwing that out. And if we think we should still do percentages, that's fine. I just wanted to like.
Do you want me to break down what these percentages equal in terms of dollars?
Well, the funding amounts are there. Yeah, so I see that. That's why I'm just kind of like saying, should we be looking at this? Should each of these priority service areas get at least, 200?
And remember, that's over 3 years.
Yeah.
So each of those numbers have to
over
be
3
divided by 3 for an annual amount.
Yeah, and so I will say too here, for behavioral health, we said at least we award 3 organizations with that dollar amount. So that dollar amount is divided by 3 groups that can do that work. That can take on, that we can think about youth, adults, and seniors. And then for housing navigation with the current amount, we said maybe 2 awardees. Because there's only a few people in the game that can do that.
For which one?
For housing,
I'm just gonna write it here too,
yeah.
up to 3 awards for
Yeah.
behavioral health.
Okay, sorry. And we had for family and maternal health, up to 3 organizations that could do that work. Reentry, we said around between 2 and 3 orgs that could do reentry and supportive restorative services. For public benefits, we thought we could give smaller dollar amounts for those organizations that do that work, because oftentimes organizations that are doing that work, they're already doing that service. And so the grantee amount, it just kind of like fills the space for them to be able to do more enrollment. So we really take a look at, we could do between 25 and 50K grants. So we could maybe award a few more organizations. And then for preventative healthcare, we said maybe about 2 awardees in that area. So that's over 3 years. At those dollar amounts.
3-year dollar amounts, and we, a third each year. So to speak what we're talking about.
Maybe between 12 and 14 organizations in a cohort.
So I might have an idea, if we can go back to the percentage conversation, I might have an idea how we can put some more on the preventative area without taking too much off of the other areas. The numbers aren't gonna be quite as cute and round, but I think that if we pull 1% off of the top 5 areas and add that to the bottom, we're gonna have, it's kind of weird numbers, right? It becomes 24 and 14 and 24 and 19 and 9. But on the flip side, the other areas only lose 1%, and we can put a whole nother 5% on the preventative healthcare area.
Yeah, I love that.
I also want to say that I think Lauren suggested and that he felt the housing navigation services might be too high of a percentage, given.
When I say that number, $500,000 for housing navigation, and what I know about the housing situation and what's about to happen. Yeah,
I'll make the change after we finish discussing.
I'm like, that's throwing money away.
Well,
I thought it was high.
I wish it wasn't.
We can only get about this discussion. I'm serving on the Affordable Housing Finance Committee for the counties. I could add some information that I don't want to get into right now, but I think. Yeah.
So we got 2 recommendations. We got a recommendation to drop the housing money by 5% and add it to the bottom. And we have another recommendation to take 1% off the top 5 and add it to the bottom. Which way would we like to go, A or B?
I raised my hand.
Proceed as those, and then you have heavier prevention. What? I'm sorry.
No math, gymnastics over here.
Okay.
So A option.
A would be take 5% off of housing and put it on preventative health, which would then move preventative health up to 10. Walter's recommendation was take 1% off the top 5 and add that 1% to the bottom, which would give another 5%. But it still does not address the information that Lauren is bringing to the table about housing being too much to begin with.
And if it's housing, doing something other than housing navigation, then it could be something there, but navigating folks to cliffs, paying folks to point folks to cliffs is not.
So, I'm curious, Lauren, if it wasn't navigation, which I hear and I agree with your assessment, but it's kind of like what they mentioned. Even at the full pot of 562,000 over 3 years, that's what, 187 per year. That can't even do one housing slot. I mean, would it go to vouchers? It wouldn't be towards permanent housing, what would it go?
I don't have an answer for that, you know.
Well,
I have too many, so I can't say I'm out loud.
We can be addressed in the night discussing this because there are affordable housing issues and navigating makes sense to me to housing. Because that's a big need, but it's stock of housing is another thing.
So we're always calling it cliffs instead of nowhere. Is that what I'm hearing you say? You say navigating them to cliffs?
Yeah.
Cliffs an organization? Or?
Yeah, and the cliffs are about to grow in number over the next 2, until the administration changes. The cliffs are about to grow in number, so why increase the number of navigators to be pointing folks to cliffs?
What do you think about rental assistance?
Now, they can be pointed to, they will be able to point folks to other transitionary housing solutions and stuff like that, so we do have to have housing navigation. And I'm probably an even greater need for it, but, yeah, I don't know if the county, how much of that the county is actually handling and how much the CBOs are handling out. The young lady that was back there, I've heard her mention a couple of times about navigating folks are trying to find housing resources for folks that she works with.
This is your.
So I was going
Yes, sir.
to,
You have 2. Who are you recognizing? Me?
She started talking, I heard you.
okay, so I was just going to agree with Walter's recommendation. And the reason for that is that I think it would bring the preventive healthcare to what? It would bring it to 10 or
To 10, I think.
10%. So I think that makes sense because we will be having that will leave housing navigation services at 14%. And I'm just comparing housing to preventive healthcare. So 14 and 10. Housing is upstream of preventive healthcare. So that means that, just think of it in these terms. So people that have insecure housing situations, they usually can't store their medications. They usually don't keep their medical appointments. They don't go to they have more frequent visits to the emergency rooms for STIs and STDs, diagnoses of HIV and AIDS. So this makes sense, like from a numbers perspective. So that's just my rationale justification for supporting his recommendation.
Brother Walter.
I'm never gonna sit next to Brother Willie again.
No, it's W A and W I, my bad. Go ahead.
Of the two proposals you have on the floor, why don't we just vote on them so we can move on?
That was what I was proposing.
So I would-
I'm gonna add some more meat to that.
Well,
So
you
A
can add all night long.
No, that was important.
Well, I have 2 or 3 important.
That
Would you like to go around and have people say A or B?
Yes, I
Is
would.
that okay?
You
I mean, like,
start with Lord, A or B? A,
we don't.
B, good, okay. Stop. A.
B.
J.
B, yes.
Walter.
B for me.
Willie.
A.
B.
Alicia.
A,
Walter. A. B. Leslie.
A.
This is A.
And
Is there a tie?
then I want to ask Dr. Bruce, who's online.
Dr. Bruce? Dr. Bruce, A or B?
Am I permitted to vote?
Yes, we have you as just cause today. So yes,
I would like to keep the numbers even if possible.
So would you
A.
choose A or B?
A.
okay,
Now is the time?
No,
I just want to double check. Wait, who said A? Can I just see hands? Cause I had 4 A's, that's right.
so you're the only one who hasn't voted, Chair. And right now we have 6 to 4.
I vote B.
Yeah, that's 7 to 4.
Okay,
That's
so
why
B,
I reserved
so B wins.
till E.
Is everybody okay?
I'm not okay. We're only talking about 1%. You're talking from 5% to 9%, right?
No, it's
I
the
mean,
top 5.
It's the top
But
5.
if you take 1% from the top 5 and add it to 5%, that's 9%. I mean, that's 10%.
That's 10%.
Then if you do it the other way, it's what percent?
Still 10.
It's still
10%.
10.
Double the percentage.
No, but what the other way was taking money from housing alone and moving it down. So we just reduced up the top 5 by 1%, and it still gives them the same amount of.
So it
Okay.
affects each
Such
section.
small
Okay, so
percentage,
I
but
would
it's double
still
the
stick with
percentage
We still stick with A?
to make it more equitable.
And we'll work with the panel to look for other housing services besides navigation, so hopefully rental supports and actual meaningful services.
Yeah, because when we're talking navigation, we're just talking referrals.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it.
And that's a lot of money for some referrals.
That's a lot of money to have someone just give someone a number to call.
In the RFP, there are some allowable there are a lot more activities that are in that group. So I think it sounds like we need to pass on the recommendation to the panel that we want to prioritize services beyond referrals.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's already in place.
So we will update these dollar amounts.
With the
To reflect that
updated
percentage.
adjustments, are we ready now to make a determination to accept the recommendations and changes to the RFP?
Mr. Chair, I would move that we accept the recommendation from the 3 subcommittees that's reported here tonight.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and properly second that we take the recommendations from the 3 subcommittees, integrate them into the RFP and accept them to move forward. Are you ready for?
And can I just approve the final draft to forward to the equity committee, just to clarify that that's the vote?
Friendly amendment, you amend your.
Well, certainly. There can be an amendment to the amendment. There's no further. Sorry about that, yes.
I'll second the amended motion.
All right, the amendment is that we also approve forwarding the RFP to the next level, will be the equity committee, along with this decision that we're making. Receive the information from the ad hoc committee, add it into the RFP, and with that being done, move to take the document to the next level for the equity committee to review and approve appropriately.
I'll do a roll call for this one. This is about funding.
Roll call.
Leslie Brown,
Yes.
Dr. Bruce,
She said yes or no?
I heard aye.
That was a yes.
Thank you.
sorry. Reggie. Okay. Lauren Delbert,
Aye.
Reverend Harris,
Yes.
Bianca,
Yes.
Dr. Lee,
Yes.
Walter,
Yes.
Dr. Nichols,
Yes.
Lenny,
Yes.
Willie,
Aye.
and Venetia.
Yes.
Sounds unanimous to me.
Unanimously.
Motion passes. Move it forward.
Yay. Oh, sorry.
Is there public comment? That being said, we received the motion, it passes, and we will make the necessary recommendations and the changes in the RFP and forward the RFP to the equity committee. Good work, you guys. All right.
We'll do a quick, oh, you go ahead.
Just very quickly, let's do the next agenda item. Just run through and let's look at the screen, get an update on what we have. And I think we are on track.
Yeah, so just so folks can see, I actually went ahead and annotated the dates for all the things that we have accomplished together so far. So if folks want to reference that, or if they need that, if anyone asking questions, or if you just want to feel so proud of yourself. And the things that we have pending right now are resubmitting the RFQ to the equity committee, voting on the RFQ, that'll be the board of supervisors. All four ad hoc committees did present their synopsis and revisions, and we have incorporated those edits. And so we've also approved that. So we'll update that for the next meeting. There will be some outreach and recruitment conversation. We started this a few months ago in March. We will continue that offline, headed to our next meeting, due to the fact that the RFQ will be coming out on the 15th. Two different notes I'm going to say is that June 9th, the Board of Supervisors are going to approve the RFQ. So I'll send out a reminder for folks in case you want to listen along for that exciting news. June 15th.
Well, consent.
It'll be on the consent calendar. It's not really that exciting. I'm just getting excited. And on June 15th, we will be releasing the RFQ around the lead entity to BidNet, which is the platform. And so yes, and then also just one last update before is that our CEO gave us the wrong information about the process of incorporating our new members. So Antonisha Hicks is now an active full body member. Alfred Gibson will become our alternate, but it'll be 2 more weeks. He did join us by phone for most of tonight, so he will be kind of caught up. But we just need to wait until the next meeting. And then lastly, by request, just made sure to, oh, hi, Al.
Hi, Al.
Sorry, I can't see anyone on my screen. I moved the faces from it. And we also have just some information. Remember, we talked about RFQ, RFI, RFP, just to have a running kind of acronym glossary so folks don't feel confused. I know even I'm constantly mixing it up, even though I know what it is. So if there's other requests for like more accessible information, like language, please let me know. For the most part right now, it's just Chair is telling me what to put in. But if folks are saying, hey, you constantly refer to this, let's make this an accessible thing on our agendas, I want to make sure that I have that available for you. Are there any other updates? Thank you. We'll also let you know when Jasmine makes the presentation to the equity committee as well.
That's Monday, this coming Monday, 15th.
So I'll make sure to send folks the link for that. So that so you can get out the report. I just received the presentation today, so I'll get that to you as well.
I apologize, I misspoke. You're right. Well, okay. There's a contentious item on the equity committee that we anticipate is going to take up a lot of time, so the presentation may not happen if all the other items get pushed down. And that other item has nothing to do with this work here. It has to do with a county ordinance around enforcement, ICE enforcement.
ICE free, non-cooperation with ICE. So that's on the equity committee agenda for any are interested. This coming a week from today.
That being said, cover everything on the agenda tonight.
That's on camera. You do the same.
Is there public comment?
We just want to say hello to Al.
You want to say hello, congratulations to Alicia, and say hello to Al.
Hey, Al.
Hello, Al. Welcome to the crew.
Guys.
As soon as they finally get the final approval, we want to look forward to having you in the room if possible, so we can keep the work going. That being said, where are we on trainings?
I'll get you an update tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. Also, there was and I wasn't here for the May 11th meeting, minute, coverage. There was an item that was moved, having to do with, reentry that wasn't on didn't make a presentation. We need to put that back on or follow up with that.
The crisis support, the mental health.
Yes.
Okay, so we have the presentation, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can
A3.
share.
You want to hear from A3?
You want to hear from them directly?
Well,
We.
it would be good to hear from them, but in lieu of doing that, can we get the report at least? So we can put that into our information bank.
Yeah, I think because they go out at night, I think that might have been the conflict.
So that was the only group we didn't hear from.
Yes, that's right.
So to round that out, close that loop, if we can just get that information, and if we can get it via email and they can't come out because of their timing, then let's do that. And that balance out, close the loop on that. Other than that, these are the items that we've covered tonight. Good job, team. Thank you for your extra time. Thank you for opening the meeting, co-chair, and for us moving forward. With that in mind, I will entertain a motion.
Move to adjourn.
It's been moved.
Seconded that, was that Nettie?
Yes.
That will probably second that we adjourn. All in favor? Opposed? Rest of the night. All right, thank you guys. Thank you so much. Good work tonight. I appreciate you.